Yeah, I wonder. I wrote a piece not too long ago, kind of looking at some of this stuff because it was my perspective on it is almost that I believe all of these conversations are important pieces of discourse that have to happen on a collective level, and I often wonder if even if the conspiracy end of it is real in some cases, right? Meaning, to be as specific as possible, like for example, maybe Bill Gates say, maybe he is working to try and do something with vaccines, and he knows that maybe they're not the greatest in some cases, right? But the question is if you had to present that idea to the masses, what would be the best, most effective way to present it where people would actually open up to the idea of having a real discourse about, say, vaccinations? And so my idea I was putting forth was almost the reflection point for what you might call the conspiracy community to look at it and say, by going to what sounds like sort of the craziest, almost murkiest evidence, are we actually, potentially shutting down the discourse even further because we're not recognizing that, the rest of the world, if you will, is not really going to be open to that extremity, but maybe they'd be open to a better put together discourse on this. And that's kind of
Yeah.
the discussion that I'm kind of interested in having is like, can we meet the collective where we're at with some of these subjects and be more effective?
The ineffectiveness of these really extreme viewpoints in changing people's minds, um, it could be that they are sensing in like the extremism, they are sensing a lack of critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
a lack of humility, um, like, and I would say then for the extremist, like, have you really done that practice of looking um, deeply into the criticisms of your views? And
Yeah.
maybe you have. Okay, have you really, like, so just to take the example of Bill Gates, um, have you really entertained the possibility that, like all people, um, if maybe there he is and he's funding the vaccines and stuff, and then like some data point comes up that doesn't really fit his worldview and his narrative, and he's like, well, that maybe there's something there, and I'm sure the scientists will, if there's really anything to it, I'm sure the scientists will discover that, because science works and we're on the right path. Like, and so he'll kind of dismiss that data point. And then like some other thing comes up and it's like, hey, there's some kind of error, this uh, human whatever gonadotropin got into the vaccines in Kenya and made a lot of women infertile. And it's like, oh gosh, we didn't really planning for that to happen, but it's okay because they're overpopulated anyway. And let's just not talk about that too much. They don't really know that it's for their own good, but we're doing good here. And besides, if this got out, it would harm the overall vaccine agenda, which is really important for the health of humanity. And so we shouldn't really tell people about some of these things that might feed anti-vaccine hysteria. Like, people have a good reason to lie in their world.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to tell the truth when it goes against something that you want to happen and something that you believe. So what if we just saw Bill Gates as a very powerful, but just as flawed and just as complicated as anybody else person? Like, then, like, to see that complexity involves a sacrifice of crusading against evil.
Yeah.
And it makes the world complicated. And it also, in the end, makes your activism a lot more effective because you're in reality. You're not jousting against these exaggerated caricatures of evil, tilting against windmills. The Don Quixote. I mean, what an image that is. He thinks the windmills are giants, and he's jousting against them with his lance. Like that's what's happening here. So no wonder nothing changes.
Yeah.
So I think that this is the kind of humility and maturity that's necessary for us to, because it's not like bad things are not happening perpetrated by the controllers of a lot of wealth and power.
Yeah.
I think it's generally a mistake to locate the perpetrator in the person of individuals atop these organizations. I think that the perpetrator is much more of a collective, emergent phenomenon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really time for some humility and maturity in the conspiracy sector.
Yeah. That was kind of the essence of the piece, was to bring in that maturity at the end of the day, because I just feel we're at a time where that conversation is becoming mainstream. I mean, we saw it so much with COVID.